G'day, Jason here. What we're going to do in this video is step through how I set up a page in WordPress. If I've built a website for you and I've sent you to this link, this will be exactly what you're looking at in February 2023. If you've just stumbled across this video by accident, I'm using the Astra Pro theme here and their Spectra plugin to give the extra blocks that we need. You may find this useful, some of the techniques in here, but it might not look exactly the same way as yours looks depending on how the theme has been set up. Alright, with that said, let's get into it. Alright, so first up, from the WordPress dashboard here under Pages, I'm just going to go Add New to create my new page, and I'll get presented with an empty page looking like this. So we'll add a title, My Test Page, and there's times where we're going to need that and sometimes where we won't, but I'll come back to that at the end of the video. Now first things first, it's very easy to just start adding text to this page. Just click in there and start typing whatever it is that I'm going to type. Some of the techniques that we're going to go through here might seem a little bit overly complicated, but there are reasons why they've done that way. It gives us a lot of flexibility later on to make the page look how we want it to look. So we're not going to start by throwing a paragraph in there. What I'm going to do first is put a container on the page. Everything that I build, pretty much everything that I build, the rule of thumb will start with a series of containers on the page, and those containers are blocks that would basically hold some content for us, which gives us some scope and flexibility to shift things around and do some interesting things with them. So to add a new container, I've got a couple of options. I can click the blue plus up there to add whatever blocks I want. I can also do the same thing over here, or if I type slash and start typing container, it will appear there. If you know what you're looking for, / and the first few characters of the block you're looking to insert will get you that block. So there's a couple of preloaded layouts here that we can start with. And generally you'll be using one of those three most of the time. I'm going to start off by putting a 2-column container block on the page. Now what this does, if I click the list view there, is you'll see I've got my container there, and if I expand that, each one of these little columns is its own container as well. And that then gives us the building blocks to do what we need to do. So let's get started. So I'll just tuck that out of the way for now. Generally speaking, I'll start adding the text content for the page on the left. Oops, I meant to make that a heading. Let's go a heading. Hello there. And yeah, start adding your content for this section in this right-hand column here. Generally, I'd look at starting off with a subheading, a heading 2 in this case, adding the paragraph text under it. If I've got another subheading to add, I'll be starting a brand new container down the page to do that. Now there's a little quirk I picked up here, so I'm just going to add a list in between those two. List 1, 2, 3. There's some bits and pieces there. Now, by default, everything in these containers, including the parent container and then the 2 columns, the child containers, is center aligned. And that can mess around with lists and things sometimes. So what I'll do is, you'll see I've got my tree down here. So if I click that first container, I've selected that one. Or I can come back here and make sure that there's my empty container, there's the container that's got the text in it. So I know which one I've got selected here. And under Flex Properties here on the right hand side, I will change the alignment here to left. And that just makes sure that bullets or anything else I've got there that's a little bit, not just a paragraph of text, will sit on the page properly. So once we've got our body of content here, so a heading 2 and a bit of text there, we need to start thinking about labeling this container so that it's a bit easier to find for us later on. So I'll come back and select the parent container here that I've inserted, and you'll see I've selected all of it. We've still got our empty container there we haven't done anything with, which is that one. Our container there which has got the text in it. So I'll come back and choose the parent one, and you should see it outlined like this. I'll come over to Advanced, and then Advanced there, and under HTML Anchor I will enter, I'll just call this product name. Now don't you call it product name, this should be very specifically what this section is about. It could be a particular aspect of your service or a particular aspect of your product, or whatever this section is, probably needs to line up there. In fact, I will call it hello there. Now you'll notice I have put a hyphen in between the two words rather than using a space. You'll notice the description here. Enter a word or two without spaces to make a unique web address. So there should only be one instance of that on the page. And you notice what that's done is it's labelled this container up here. So as we start adding more and more containers down the page, we build the content out, what you'll end up with down the left hand side here is quite a long list of containers, and you will get lost. You won't know what you're clicking. So by adding that HTML anchor under the advanced tab there, not only does it add it there, it also adds an ID into the HTML code for this block of text. Now I don't know how much of an impact that has with Google. It might have 0.01% of a nudge in terms of your SEO, but it hasn't taken long to do. It might help a teeny weeny bit, may as well do it. The other thing that will get you the ability to do as well is if you need to link to a specific, that specific part of the page directly, you can do that, and we might come to that later on. So once we've done that, I might just come back and close my list view a minute. So we've got this container here that we haven't done anything with yet. So I'm going to start off by putting an image in here. So if I click the plus there, I've got an image there, media library. So I've just got a bunch of random images in here. We'll grab that one to start off with. So if I was to then publish that page and then view it and have a look at what we've done, we can see in terms of the layout, this is just very basic layout at the moment, but we can see we've got our text down the right hand side here. There's this image on the left, and it's all sitting there nicely. And if I was to go right click, inspect, and click that little fella there to give me a phone simulation, you can see they just stack down the page that way. But say for example I had more text here, so I'm just going to press enter and just type some other random stuff just to give me a much longer block of text, update that. I'll come back down here and click view page. So we'll see now that the image is sort of sitting in the middle of the height of this first paragraph, or this first section of text. So that might be what I want, but it also might not be. So if I come back to edit that page again, I'll click the tree and I'll click the parent container. So I've got that parent container clicked. Now under container here, I'll go equal height, which means that the height of this left-hand container, this one, and the height of this right-hand container here are now the same. You'll see before, if I click the parent and untick that, and that will take it back to, yep, it has reset to where it was before. If I click that container now, you'll notice that the container is actually only as big as the image, and the height above it and below it is just nothing. So where I've got a column, or a pair of columns, parent container, equal height, and if I click that first one, we'll notice that the height of this will just stretch to the height of that, regardless of how much stuff is in here. Now that I've got that selected, I can come down here and with that child container selected, just make sure I've got my blue line around it, I want the contents of that to be towards the top. So if I update that now and view that, we'll see the top of the image is in line with the top of the heading there. Now as you're running some content down the page, that might be a layout that you prefer. Another option, if you want the image to be the full height and just automatically stretch to the height of all of the text on the right hand side, is I'm going to remove that, and instead I'm going to add a cover image in here. So it wasn't in there, so I'll just start typing cover, and there it is. Media library, I'll pick that one again. Pardon me. Now by default, it wants me to write a bit of a headline of text over the top of it. That's sort of what the cover image is designed to do, but I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to leave that empty. And rather than having the paragraph there selected, I'm going to click up here so that the cover is now selected. At this point in time, I can then choose the focal point here. So as I move this around, you'll notice that the image over here is moving a bit, depending on what I've got selected. Now this is really handy because as your website scales up and down depending on the screen size, and if people have increased their font size or dropped, whatever the case may be, where this image crops will change. So what you want to be doing is grabbing this focal point, and if you've got a person in here, you want to be more or less dropping this on their eyes or immediately in front of their eyes, so you're sort of looking at what they're looking at. A little bit of trial and error, but after you've done this a couple of times, it'll become pretty obvious as to where you want to drop this focal point, but either on their eyes if they're looking towards the camera, or if they're looking off to the side at something, put that just kind of in front of their face. And that way, when it crops, it will not chop their head off or do anything silly like that. So just for example, I'm just going to drop it on this peak here. I'll come down. Now if I take this overlay here down to 0, because these are designed to have some text over the top of it, they do by default darken the image up so you can read the lighter text over it. We're not doing that, so I'll just take that opacity down to 0. I'll come further down and I'll change the height of the cover from pixels to percent, and I'll change my 20% to 100. And what we've done there is we've made this image stretch to the height of the column of text, and it will crop around where I've put the focal point. So if I update that now and come back and view page, so we can see there the bit where I put the focal point, I've actually got it slightly off to the right there by the looks of it. But even so, where that's cropped, it hasn't cropped off the thing that I've said is the most important part of the photo, and it's the height of that's just going to adjust there. And if I right click inspect and have a look at my my phone version as well, now the height of that is much shorter in here, and that's something that will be, you know, we can customize on a case by case basis. But even so, you can see where I've put the focal point on top of that peak, it's kept that more or less in the center of the image. So even if that was somebody's head or somebody looking at something, you would still see the thing that they were looking at. Now you might want to put a video in here as well. So I'm going to select my cover image now. Have I got the cover image selected? Yep, I do. So I'm going to just remove that. So my container is now empty again. Over in this other window here, I'm just going to grab, there we go. Okay, so I've just copied the link to a YouTube video. So I'm just going to put a paragraph in there for now. Now if I right click that and paste, that's just the link to the YouTube video. WordPress has gone, YouTube video, I know what to do with that. So that will, any second now, I'll just close that tree to get it out of the way. My internet has been a little bit ordinary here today, so that's taking its time. But what I will do, well, I can show you it's figured out it's a YouTube video because we can see it there. There we go, it's loaded eventually. All right, so copying and pasting a YouTube URL, and the same works for some other social sharing sites. Vimeo, I think, works the same. I don't think it'll work with Facebook or Instagram directly. They require a bit more of a dance, but if it's on YouTube anyway, easy. Just drop it in. So if I now update that and view that page, come on internet, wheel is spinning, it's thinking. There we go. So that's embedded that YouTube video in there. So you see that with the text on the right hand side, on the left hand side there I can put, you know, lots of different things. An image that appears in its fullness, an image that stretches to fit the full height of that container and just crops to suit, YouTube video. And the other thing you can do, if you're feeling a little bit creative as well, is we will just remove that YouTube video now. I'm going to put a, we could put a quote in there. Here's something famous said by me. Whoop. Now that's just the default quote block inside of WordPress, but you see it could be anything, any kind of pull quote, and you can alter the design parameters around that to make that look however it needs to look as well. So for the exercise, I'm just going to come back here and I'm going to remove my quotes, and I'm going to add my, I'm going to put the cover image back in. COV cover, there it is, media library, let's grab that. I'll just go through these steps again quickly, move the focal picker, drag the overlay down to 0, 100%. Now I should clarify, because it took me a while to figure this out the first time I use it. This only works if we go to the parent container there. So I've got the parent container selected, container. These have got to be set to equal height. If the parent container isn't set to equal height, it's not going to stretch. So I've got this here. What I'm going to do now, rather than build another one from scratch, is I'm just going to duplicate that. Now we don't want that to also say hello there, so I'm going to go to advanced, hello there, 2, just so I can tell which one's the original, which one's the copy. So if we had multiple blocks running down the page, it can start to look a little bit dull and monotonous depending on what's going on here. So something we can do is stagger these as we come down. So if I come down here and grab my second one, so I've got that whole container, parent container selected, and come to flex properties here and just change the direction of that. So instead of being left to right, we're going right to left, and it just swaps those two around. Now the beauty of this is that you'll see this little screen here. I'm only doing this on the desktop. And that's one of the reasons, just to backtrack a little bit, why I tend to put the image on the left-hand side and then the text on the right-hand side always, and then use this on desktop to stagger the content like that if I want. Because I'm looking at this on a phone, I don't really want to go image, text, text, image, image, text, text, image. It starts to, on a smaller screen, start to lose your way a little bit. So by doing it this way, we can stagger our content down the page like this. But if I look at this on a phone, I still get image and then my text, and then my next image and the next set of text, whatever that happens to be. And as I'm moving down the screen on a phone, it's consistent. You can imagine if that one sort of had headings and then two images one after the other, that would just be a bit weird on a phone. So by keeping them all that way to start off with and then reversing them on the desktop on an alternating basis, you get the layout on the widescreen like that, but it makes sense on a phone. Now you might ask, that's all well and good, but say I drop a bunch of text in here and I realize, I don't really have an image to put there, and I just want that to be a full width section of text. No problem at all. So what we're going to do is I'll pick this second container, and just to keep things simple, I'll go back to left to right. Now what we can do from this point is this first container here that contains the image, I can just remove that child container. So this is now sitting in the middle like that, which I don't really want. So if I come back here, and under the container settings, remember I've got this child container set here of width, let's just make that 100%. So if I update that now, probably won't see this because none of these lines of text are very long, but if they were long lines of text, they would now be taking up the full width of the container. In the same way as if I suddenly want 3 columns in here, well, let's expand that. So I've got one there, and let's duplicate it, and let's duplicate it. Now I've said all of these are 100%, so that's going to get confusing for the poor computer later on. So if I've got 3 columns, let's make them all 33% wide. And update that. And here we come down the page, and all of a sudden I've got 3 columns there, which, same as before, we'll all just stack one on top of the other, one on top of each other on a narrower screen. So we can see by starting off using containers, and I generally start with a 2-column setup initially. It does give us flexibility to move it out to a single column, to change it to 3 columns or more. It's just a case of adding those extra child containers inside, and grabbing the first one and just duplicating it is a simple way to do it, because you know you're definitely inside that parent then. And you just need to then change the container settings over here. You know, if I had 4 columns there or 4 containers in here, I'd want to be changing them all to 25%, for example. All right, so let's get a little bit fancier with what we're doing here now. So I'm going to collapse that there, and I'm going to insert after. And again, I'm going to start off with another container. So I'm going to put a single column container in this time with a heading, another section heading, I'll just call it another section. Come down, select the container there, advanced, another section. So whoops, so there we go, so I know what I'm looking at. And say I've done that, and then I want to put some columns underneath that heading. Now I can insert after and go container, and it just dropped a single column in there. It didn't really give me a chance to choose a multiple column layout when I create a container inside another container that's a single one. That's the way it is at February 2023. I don't know if that's intentional or if it's a bug, but it is what it is. So the workaround for that is, after that parent container, I will drop another container, and this time I'm going to choose 4 columns. Let's go crazy. So I've got this container here with 4 ones inside it. I can then just drag that up under there, and that is now inside there. So I've got my subheading there, 4 containers underneath it, and then I can just add, you know, whatever it is that that I need to inside these individual containers. So I'll just put something in there so we've got them. So we can see how we can drag a container or a set of containers inside other containers, and you can start to build out fairly complicated layouts that way if you need to. All right, so a little bit fancy, step 2. I'm going to choose this middle container here. Yep, that'll do. I'll choose a middle container. Now, under style here, there is a bunch of other options. So I've got the parent container here, parent container selected, that's got the 3 columns inside it. Let's change the background color to something hideous like that. Now, that could just as easily be, let's go back to that parent container again, a gradient, an image, or even a background video. I wouldn't recommend putting background videos behind sections of text like this, because you know, it can make people dizzy and have them fall off their chair. But there are circumstances where having a background video behind a section, you know, especially in the header on a home page, is something you may wish to do. So anyway, I've created a background there. Now, if I update that and come back to view the page, as I'm scrolling down, we can see we've got that color block there. Now, I've gone for this, you know, fairly bright-ish green here. You would probably want to use something either a little bit more subtle or something darker with a lot more contrast, and then contrast, so maybe have some white text on a darker background. So just be careful with your color choice down here. This is not a good example, but I can do a bit more with that. So if I had a lot of, you know, different sections down the page and wanted to clearly delineate them, alternating some colors down the page is one way to do it. But if I come back here, just make sure I've got the parent container selected. There we go. Back onto the Style tab. So I've got my background color here. Another trick that I really like is a shape divider. So I've got 2 options here, top and bottom. I'm going to choose mountains, which gives me this wave here. Now that's going from the green into this not quite black color here, but what's above it is white. So I'm going to choose white as the color to transition that into. And then I might do the same with the bottom, mountains. I want to transition that one into white as well. So we can see now that we've got, instead of just straight lines, we have a number of different patterns here that we can use to help break the page up as well. What tends to happen though with this is you'll notice that the text is starting to kind of move into the transition a bit, both top and bottom, which we probably don't want. So if you're going to use some shape dividers like this, you also want to have a look at the spacing. Now, padding and margin are two ways that you can add space around an element. And the way I heard to remember it is if you imagine Santa's belt, funny me saying Santa's belt, padding is the area inside the belt. You know, if you're putting a Santa suit on, you're padding out inside the belt, and the margin is then the space outside the belt. So in this case, our belt is, if I come back here and click the parent container, come on, show me the lines. So we can see this line here where it's outlined that container. That's like the belt. That's the border between what is padding inside the element and margin outside the element. So left and right padding I don't really want to touch, because if I change it here, I need to change it everywhere. Otherwise, as you scroll down the page, the edges of the text are going to do that as you move down the page. Don't really want that either. Now by default, these are linked, and you'll see that because the chain is activated here. So I'll click that to unlink them, and let's make the top padding 100, and you'll see it's pushing those down. Bottom padding 100, it'll do the same thing there, push them away. We want to leave left and right at 10 though. Now, due to the nature of responsive design, this is going to be a little bit different depending on how wide your screen is, because words will wrap a bit differently. So my preview here is only a preview. I really want to update it and view the page and see how it sits. See, I still haven't got enough there, top and bottom. It's better, but I still need more. So I've added that page, come down here, I've got that parent selected, style, spacing, you know, maybe I want, oh, let's just go all out and change that to 200, 200. Doesn't hurt to spread it out anyway. Many web pages get a little bit cramped, especially if there's a lot of text on them, so spreading them out a bit is fine. And see, that's better there now. Now, if I click inspect and do my quick phone inspection, see it's not quite right there on the phone. Bottom one's just okay, top one is not. So what I would want to do is edit that page, select that element, style, spacing, and we'll see I've been adjusting the desktop padding. If I choose the phone over here, then they're still all at 10, and then I could adjust the phone top and bottom padding as well to suit that screen. So I'm mostly running through this in the desktop environment here, but you can change margins and padding and bits and pieces like that. Wherever you see that little symbol, you can control your desktop and your tablet and your phone control separately. Alright, so we'll just update that now. Come back here. The editing window in WordPress these days is reasonably close to what you're going to get, but it's always good to update your page, load the front end of the page that Joe Public sees, and have a look at it there. Make sure if you're in Chrome, right click an empty area, click inspect, make sure that it's, you know, got the phone dimensions there. You can choose some different kinds of phones and that if you like, but just make sure that everything sits okay there. So you're looking at that. I need to add some more top padding to the mobile measurements on this one. Alright, now you'll see that this little dummy site here has automatically done that formatting with the headline. Now, depending on the way the site's set up, sometimes that will happen and sometimes it won't. So it's basically grabbed the page title there and done some magic and make it look like that. Now, in the case of this example here, that's a global setting, and every internal page on the website will just inherit the way that heading looks. But that isn't always the case. Alright, so I've just changed some settings as somebody started the lawnmower next door. So instead of that sort of formatted page title up the top here, it's now just displaying like that. And depending on how the site's set up, that may be the way it is. So if that's the case, what we want to do is we're going to come in here and just click that little eyeball and turn it off. So if I come back up here now and view the page, you'll see it's gone. But that's not exactly what we want either, because the page title is now nowhere. So this is where we might use our cover image for, which is what I've got going on here, for one of the main purposes that exists. So I'm going to, after that, go cover. Now I'm not putting this one inside a container because I want this to be full width, occupy the whole width of the screen regardless of what else is going on. So I'm going to go media library and just choose the same image, why not? And this is where I can say, so the advantage of doing it this way is I might be able to say something a little bit different to what's up here, or I can also have that with a bit of some subtext going on as well. Let's just center that there. Now, the advantage of the cover image, of course, is we can control where it gets cropped if you're looking at it on a phone. And now often if it's a predetermined image across the top there, or it varies from page to page, but it's controlled centrally elsewhere, the cropping can be a bit random and you can end up with people's heads being chopped off and all sorts of other unpleasant things. So if there's no formatting of your page title built into the site, it's because at some point in time probably the cropping was weird and therefore we just need to manually create the heading for each page. So there's lots and lots of different ways to do this, but a cover image is the simplest way. So that goes on there. We've done that. Now we can leave the opacity where it is. You can change the height if you want. I think it defaults to about 400 by default. Yeah, about 400 is the default, but you can make it bigger or smaller if you wish. So I'll just leave that off for now just so we can have a look at it. The one thing we do want to do is make sure that it is set to full width, which it is in this case. If I update that page and view page here, then we have a heading section like that. And as we move down the page, we'll see that because everything's inside of a container, all our left and right margins should be properly aligned, and we've got a nicely presented header image at the top of the page. All right, just to recap, that's how the basics for building out a page in 2023 or February 2023. Both the Astra Pro theme and the Spectra plugin with some of the blocks that I've used there are getting updates and new releases all of the time, and so in 6 months' time I almost guarantee you this will be different, but the same principles are there. If I come back to edit the page, this little list view up here is your friend. If you look at this, you can expand each thing out here, and clicking it will identify what it is that you're looking at. From there, when you control some things over the side here, whether it be a container setting for equal height, whether it's the way that the flexbox flows left and right or aligns, or whether there's style controls over here, you need to make sure that you are actually editing the one that you're trying to edit in the first place. Have fun. Now, I have not been through any of the steps or the processes I use to set the theme up initially and get everything to the way this works. As I said, if I'm the one who's built the website for you, you probably never need to know that. But if you've just stumbled upon this randomly and you want some videos on how I got from an empty WordPress install to this point, throw a comment down the bottom, and if there's enough of them there, then I might get stuck into one of those one day. All right, thanks for watching. We will see you next time.